Good evening, everybody. This is Mr. Forshee. Today I wanted to cover Chapter 18 with you, genes and cancer. I know in some classes we've started this already, so you may have some of the notes already down in your note packet, but it's important again that you guys look at Chapter 18, read over the Chapter 18. We do have a quiz this week on Wednesday, and I'll kind of give you a heads up a little bit on what the quiz is going to cover as we look at the notes today. Now, again, what the notes are kind of just the background of what we've been learning, but it'll help to kind of fill in some of the blanks. We're going to cover Monday with you some of the basics in terms of how cell receptors work and how we can kind of silence that oncogene into like back to a proto-oncogene. So kind of sit back. We're going to kind of talk about some of this, and like I said, I'll take questions on Monday in terms of how this is set up. Now, I showed everybody Melissa's story of surviving retinoblastoma. There's four primary cancers I want you guys to know about. Retinoblastoma, colon cancer, breast cancer, and one that's a type of leukemia. It's CML, and I'll talk to you about that in a video. Now, with Melissa's story, it's kind of important that we understand about retinoblastoma. Really, there's a sporadic, and then there is what we call germline. Germline means that it's hereditary and the person's born with a particular mutation to begin with. And so they come down to be more of a predisposed to have the condition. Now you can see here, 40% of the cases that we have of the retinoblastoma are going to be autosomal dominant, and 60% of them are going to be sporadic. Now the key thing with this is it's autosomal because it's on chromosome 13 and it's on that of the Q arm. Now with how this works, it goes into what we call Nonson's two-hit theory. Nonson's two-hit theory would say that in order to show a particular trait, sometimes you need to knock out both of the genes. And here's an example. We have a patient here with already a mutation. It's the RB. The RB positive is the one with a healthy chromosome. Now, as you could see, this particular person, if they have the mutation to begin with, like Melissa, there's a 90% chance of them developing retinoblastoma. Now, this usually occurs in both eyes because all the cells in the body have the mutation. And because all the cells in the body have this mutation, osteosarcoma and fibrosarcoma are also going to be seen too. Now, for this, if it's sporadic, it's a little different story. And again, most of these cases are going to be sporadic. I showed classes on Friday of the tumor of a woman that's 66 years old, but it took 66 years for that mutation to show up. Now, again, it is a mutation of the RB, but if you notice here, they're starting with two positive RBs. So this kind of ties into Nonson's concept that you have two healthy genes. In order for this condition to show up, both have to be knocked out. This ties directly into Jane and her brother with the APC mutation we talked about also. So again, cancer is difficult because sometimes it can be sporadic, but also times it can be hereditary. And also with being hereditary, sometimes if you have the mutation, there could be a high chance of someone developing that particular cancer type. Now, again, how do you get a mutation? This is where, again, I talked to some of the classes already, but you could tell from the differences here from a missense to nonsense. Missense is usually sometimes a minor mutation, but sometimes that's enough to get the protein not to fold properly. And again, it can result to a protein that doesn't work. So when we look at like the APC, there's some type of mutation that's going to lead to that of cancer. But I want everybody to know that cancer is an accumulation mutation. Usually it's just not one mutation. So in colon cancer, like APC is one of the first ones to show the mutation, but there's several after. Your book has a really good diagram to show and kind of represent this, where cancer is monoclonal. That means it starts in one cell, and then from that one cell, as it divides, it develops more and more mutations. So kind of like the example of the retinoblastoma, you have one mutation of that RB, but for some reason, 90% of the time, it knocks out that other mutation. In talking to a researcher in this particular field, he was telling me they're uncertain why that is. So is it some breaking a chemical signal? It might be. Now, with cancer, it has three primary properties. I talked to you guys about this before, but we have proliferation, which means cell growth, a metastasize, and clonal means that it's going to take and copy. Now, again, we can see there's two types of tumors, malignant and benign. The malignancy is the one that is cancer forming. The benign can be, again, transferred into malignancy, but oftentimes we could see if we can remove that at an early stage, it's going to prevent that maybe tumor cells from spreading. Now, here's a good example of loss of normal growth control. So, for example, the top area is how it should work is we have a damaged cell and there's no repair for it, so apoptosis occurs. Now, this is if your cells are working properly, where you have an enzyme this body produces to repair a cell that has damaged DNA. But look at cancer cells. We have a first mutation, second, third, and fourth. That's what's leading to the uncontrolled growth. So cancer is, again, not typically a one mutation. It's going to be an accumulation mutation. So you can copy this into your notes, but you can kind of see kind of the differences in terms of how this works. Now, characteristics of cancers are these. So some of these we've already talked about being invasive, meaning they spread. Transplantable is an interesting one. I told some of the classes already that we had there was a story where a gentleman needed a kidney, and so he had a kidney transplant, and then he developed cancer. Well, it turned out that the cancer was in the kidney that he received, so he ended up suing the patient who received the kidney from. That saved his life. So, it's just showing you that if you had some type of tissue transfer and the mutation is in those particular cells, it could lead to a type of cancer with growth to occur in somebody. But you could see angiogenesis, the induction or making of blood vessels, hereditable, loss of self-control cycler, less adherent. We talked about that is for them to move, they kind of lose their cohesion properties. Now, metastasis, in order for a cancer cell to spread, it's going to grow in a particular area of the body, and then it's going to use the blood vessels as a highway system to take and spread. So that metastasizing now, the cancer cells leave the main area, travel through the blood system, and are going to tumble along until they find an area to kind of start new growth. So doctors will often say that these will spread, but the growth doesn't actually occur until maybe they remove one particular or destroy one particular tissue type. So, for example, maybe there's a polyp or cancer in the colon. They remove that polyp or that cancerous growth in the colon, and that cancer, because it's spread, may now start growing in a different tissue type. So they almost think that cancer cells like produce a chemical that will silence the others to stop growing. Now, once that message is lost because that tumor cell has been removed, it kind of triggers those other cells to grow. So that's some of the kind of research that is out there. Now, two types of genes that control involved with cancer is there are gatekeepers and there are caretakers. Gatekeepers is in a way for to suppress tumors from growing and kind of to silence some of those oncogenes. So it regulates the cell growth cycle and passage through the cell cycle. So if we look at like a tumor suppressor gene, that is going to, stop the cell cycle, put it in G0 and try to repair it with other types of enzymes. Those helper enzymes would be an example of the gatekeepers. Now, caretaker, again, helps to maintain the integrity of the genome. So what that means is it does a lot of DNA repair. So to repair that DNA is going to be critical. Everybody, again, throughout their lifetime is going to have mutation. It could be copying error, it could be damage to the DNA from like UV or chemical, but there's sometimes we have damage that's going to occur. But if you have a properly functioning system, it should do an autocorrect and kind of like autocorrect on a keyboard, or if you're writing a document in Google Docs, it's going to try to make a correction on that mistyped word. But if you don't have that autocorrect, that mutation or misspelled word stays in the sentence, and unfortunately we can pass that along. And if we're building a particular protein, that can be difficult to kind of stop it at that point. Okay, so in the control of the cell cycle, one of the things we could do is control something that's called a cyclin. A cyclin is something, this is in your notes, but this is what I usually cover with classes typically during the year, is this particular level of expression. This is really kind of develops in that phosphorylation. But if you notice like the G1, G1S cyclin, these are areas where these tumor suppressor can kind of disrupt the cyclins and actually not allow them to move the cell cycle on. And this is how we can pull it out of the cell cycle and put it into G0. So like if you're looking at the G1 cyclin, again, the cyclin is a protein that we're actually going to build that's going to transport along with other cyclins to move us from G1 to S to G2 to the M phase. Now, again, if something's damaged or not working properly, we want to stop this. So how do we do this? Is we actually stop those cyclins from being made. And I'm going to show you something here in terms of how this works. So this top part here is called the fluctuation of the MPF. Now, MPF is something that you're really going to cover more in an AP Bio course, but I'm kind of introducing it here. But that MPF, what it's going to do is it's going to, as it accumulates and becomes active, and that's also triggering those cyclins to become active with it. And you can see from that top line how it's actually moving it along here from the top all the way through 2 cycles. So up at the top here, we see 2 cycles, we see 1, and then we see 2, and we're actually going into a third. So how does this work exactly? Well, we have these cyclin-dependent kinases. That's a CDK that I'm just kind of circling right here. Now, what happens with this is to kind of move along these stages, the cyclin is going to take and accumulate. And as it accumulates, that's what's going to join onto this MPF. Now, the MPF here is really kind of the cyclin-dependent kinase and the cyclin together. And this right here is what promotes the mitosis by phosphorylating various proteins. So this MPF is very, very important because it's triggering the events, kind of like the cyclins I showed you before, to go and move from cycle to cycle. So again, that MPF, this is nothing I'm going to really quiz you on or test you on, but I'm just trying to prepare you for that next level. We understand this mechanism very well. So we're trying to kind of show you in terms of how do we start the cycle and how do we stop it. Well, like for example, how do you stop the cycle here is you can degrade or break down the cyclins of that MPF is degraded and it terminates the M phase and the cell enters into that of G1. So like how do we know to stop the M phase is by breaking down that particular cyclin. So you can see here during G1, conditions in the cell favor degradation of the cyclin, and the CDK components of the MPF is recycled. So all we're doing here is we're kind of recycling and building back up. So from like G1 all the way back to this kind of that checkpoint 2, what we're doing is we're building everything back up. But that's how we kind of get these peaks and valleys, as we see up here, is the whole idea of the MPF activity kind of building up. We break it down. Okay, then it starts another cyclin to build up. We go the MPF activity kind of peaks, and as it drops, it's then going to kind of shut it down. Now, why is this important? Well, this is about controlling the cell cycle. And with cancer cells, we lose the ability to control the cell cycle, so it runs out of control. Now, to kind of give you guys a heads up, the program that I'm using only lets me take 15 minutes at a time. So I'm going to stop here, and then I will now jump into the next slide and start in the other area. But again, this is something I'm not going to test you on or quiz you on, but students often ask, like, how do we control the cell cycle? Well, it's by these regulatory factors. And again, it breaks down to cyclins, which are proteins that are going to build up and kind of, again, take us from one level to the next.